Good morning. So, another review video. I know you're excited. If you had trouble with yesterday's Chapter 18, Section 3 questions, just follow along and update your slides as needed. So first up, a limiting factor is something that limits a population. It's directly tied to the carrying capacity. Depending upon your environment, it could be food or water or space. So if you're in the desert, water is definitely a limiting factor, but nobody is fighting over space. If you're in a tropical forest, space is a limiting factor. There's plenty of food and water. So the limiting factor changes. When you exceed a limiting factor, a population will drop because it'll run out of that limiting factor. And that's the carrying capacity. So you can briefly go over carrying capacity, but then you're going to crash. You're going to have a population crash. So the elk and the wolves were a prime example. The elk ate all their food. And then they starved, so their population went way up. They went over their limiting factor, food, and then their population tanked, and they starved. And that actually reset their limiting factor. The habitat was less able to regrow food, and the carrying capacity went down. So this idea is a lot like the load limit on an elevator. That's a carrying capacity. If you go over the carrying capacity once or twice, you're probably fine. But if you stay over the carrying capacity, the elevator's going to break. Or another prime example, bridges have weight limits. You can think of it that way too. So if you go over your carrying capacity, the bridge will eventually break. If you do it once, you might be fine, but if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, it will break the limit. What do organisms compete for? Those limiting factors. You only compete over stuff that's limited. You wouldn't fight over, something there was a ton of. So if I came to your house with 20 pizzas, nobody's fighting over a pizza. But if I came to your house with half a pizza and be like, hey, everybody, here's half a pizza, you might fight over it because that's not enough for everybody. You know how it is. There's that snack in the fridge. There's that leftover piece of cake. There's that ice cream that's almost out. You're going to fight over it. But if there's a ton of stuff, you're not going to fight. Who do you compete with? You compete with organisms inside your own species, your own kind, and outside your own species. So outside, I'm watching birds compete over bird food, and they're just going to town. They fight over the suet, they fight over the different kinds of bird seed, but they don't fight over the hummingbird feed or the sugar water because none of these birds care about that. The biggest fights are with the birds who are in the same species. You need the exact same things. We'll see finches fight over the types of food they like, grackles posturing and fighting on the ground over the food they like. So you're more likely to fight with your own kind. Like at a picnic, if you're eating some great food and there's just a little bit of something left, you're probably going to fight with another human. Could a dog jump up and fight you for that last hot dog? Maybe, but it's more likely that you're going to fight with your own kind because you need the same things. So 4 ways that prey species avoid being eaten, like these pigeons will avoid being eaten by this feral house cat. This is an Australian documentary. And so this house cat, this wild house cat is sneaking up, and the pigeons can run away. So that's pretty easy. If you're a bird, you'll fly. They stay in groups. It's really hard to sneak up on a group that big. So the house cat's making an attempt, and one of them sees and flies away, and the whole group flies away. They're not very camouflaged. The house cat kind of is. And they're not poisonous. If you're poisonous, you need to advertise with bright colors. What's interesting is predators use all these tactics as well. They can run fast, they can hunt in groups sometimes, they can camouflage, and they can be poisonous. Eventually, don't worry, this cat will get something. But how many of you notice the spider? There's a yellow spider camouflaged on the flower. So when you go sniffing flowers, double check for predators that are waiting for pollinators to come and eat. A mutualism is a relationship where 2 organisms benefit each other. So the algae and the coral are pictured, where the algae makes food and the coral makes a rock-hard, strong home, or you have gut bacteria that make vitamins and you feed them. So that's a mutualism. You're helping each other. Commensalism is one thing is getting helped and the other organism doesn't care. So the sharks and the remora are an example. That's an okay example, but it has some issues. We'll talk about that later. And the birds in trees they nest in, the tree doesn't care if there's a bird up there nesting, but the bird definitely gets a benefit. So the bird's benefit is it gets a safe home away from predators. The remor's benefit is it gets a bunch of leftover food that the shark wasn't going to eat anyway. But these can easily tip over into problems. So in the case of birds in a tree, well, an eagle's nest can weigh half a ton. That can break a tree. And so commensalism slowly can tip into parasitism, which is the next one, where one thing helps itself by hurting something else. So the tomato hornworm is parasitized by wasps, and each little bump on that wasp's back is on that caterpillar hornworm's back is a wasp larva, just eating it while it's still alive. Now, parasites don't directly kill their host, but sometimes they can weaken their host to the point that they might eventually die. A special mutualism your book highlights is ants with the acacia tree. So the tree feeds the ants and gives them a home, and the ants defend the tree from herbivores. And so there's another video I'm going to post about that. Check the blog, Ants in Our Plants, that shows this, how the ants literally come out and defend the tree. More than that, they actually destroy competing vegetation around their tree. You can evolve to threats as well. So in Australia, rabbits were set loose, and they are a major problem. They're eating everything, and they're outcompeting the native fauna, the native animals. So they gave them a virus on purpose. And over time, the rabbits evolved resistance. So if you read the story, which was a little hard to read, the first time 99% of the rabbits died, 1% lived, and then they repopulated it. The next time, half the rabbits, or 10% of the rabbits died, or 90%, oh gosh, I'm messing this up. 90% of the rabbits died, 10% lived. And then the last time, half the rabbits died, half the rabbits lived. And the rabbits were becoming resistant to the virus. They've been trying for almost 200 years to get rid of rabbits. I'm also going to post a video about that, which is fun. And then hummingbirds, how did they co-evolve with their flowers? Well, coevolution in both these cases is how do you change? So previously with the rabbits, if you're a virus that's too good at killing, you will run out of things to infect. So it's actually in the interest of the virus to not kill 100% of the time. It's in the interest of the rabbits to not die. Well, for the hummingbirds, they changed from their normal birds. They changed their beak and their tongue to reach into these flowers. And the flowers changed their shape to only be for hummingbirds and their nectar to be a different sugar concentration for them. This guarantees for the flower that they have a guaranteed pollinator, and this guarantees for the bird that they have a guaranteed food source. So they're helping each other. That's a mutualism again. The review video with the Amoeba Sisters highlights all these relationships: predator-prey competition, mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism. They come at it starting off with doodlebugs, also known as antlions, so that's a fun watch. That's a predator-prey relationship. And then today's work. Today's work, you should click the link. You have 2 slides, and there's a ton of stories in that PDF. Each one's about a page and a half. Pick a story. So the one that's highlighted there is dung beetles help forest by eating monkey business. That's actually a 3-organism set of relationships. So it's a mutualism or commensalism, depending how you look at it. And write the article name and the type of relationship. So again, there's only 5 choices. Competition, where it's the same species fighting over resources. Predator-prey, where one thing is trying to kill another for food. Mutualism, where 2 organisms help each other. Commensalism, where one organism gets helped and the other one is unaffected. And parasitism, where one organism helps itself by hurting another, but not necessarily killing it. So I hope that you've had a good day working and that you're appreciating Cinco de Mayo. I'll see you when I see you.